Many female guards working within Stutthof Concentration Camp regularly caused such anguish, death, and suffering. Many of them fled any kind of justice at the end of the Second World War and never were brought to trial for their crimes. However, a sequence of executions carried out on Biskupia Gorda, a large hill in Gdansk, dealt with Stutthof prisoners sentenced to death. Among those were several women, notably Ava Parodies, who at just 25 years old was hanged in front of around 20,000 people on a massive gallows construction. She was among several young ladies in their 20s who were fervent Nazis, treating detainees in the concentration camps horribly within. She paid the ultimate cost for her transgressions, nevertheless. Join us today as we examine the sadist of Stutthof's execution. Kindly help our channel by making sure you subscribe. Almost immediately following the start of the Second World War, Stutthof Concentration Camp opened since the first prisoners were sent to establish it and construct the several buildings. But in 1944, Stutthof's population grew drastically, and most of the entrants were Jewish captives from other camps including Auschwitz. From the biggest concentration camp, over 24,000 inmates were dispatched there to handle the huge volume of individuals moved. The conditions at Stutthof were appalling, thus several guards hired to work there experienced similar circumstances. Thousands of people died from diseases including typhus, which brought the camp to its knees, and many more perished from hunger and malnutrition in this exceptionally severe concentration camp. The inmates came from all throughout the world, and everyday executions were carried out there with various persons shot inside the shooting range. Stutthof also employed gas chambers. Some prisoners nearly drowned in mud and were clubbed to death by the guards. The camp claimed to have killed about 65,000 people overall, many of which were killed by forced labor they were sent to do. Ava Parodies, one of those women employed at Stutthof and drafted to serve at the camp, had a bad reputation among the prisoners. She was born in Leberg in the Weimar Republic on December 17, 1920. Her early life is unknown exactly. She arrived in Stutthof for her training in August 1944 alongside several other ladies. It is thought that she was an ardent Nazi. She was learning to be an overseer of the women captives in their camp, an Aufseherin. She turned into a wardress once her training was over. Known for being quite savage, she regularly thrashed prisoners with her whip and other weapons while at Stutthof. One witness related of one instance in which she ordered a group of female detainees to undress in the bitterly cold of winter and then splashed them with ice-cold water. Parodies beat the women when they moved. Inside the concentration camps, this kind of punishment was rather widespread and usually connected to punishing several prisoners at once inside a barrack, should one person violate a minor rule. Ava Parodies kept torturing and beating prisoners, nevertheless, and therefore she was moved to the Bromberg-Out sub-camp for a short period before she was subsequently returned to the main Stutthof camp. However, as the Allies and the Red Army were approaching Stutthof, she participated in huge transports of captives out of there in April 1945. Part of the last trip of women detainees to the Lauenburg concentration camp, Parodies fled during the death march knowing she would be brought before justice at the end of the Second World War. She tried to hide out for as long as she could, but she was caught at last. She spent a brief period of time imprisoned and under interrogation. She was then sent to the Stutthof trial and among 16 prisoners accused of complicity in atrocities at the camp. Ava Parodies was one of the women who had served at the camp who was sentenced to death by the court. Just 25 years old, Ava Parodies was transported to Biskupia Gorda in Gdansk on July 4, 1946. Built on a large hill, a great set of gallows stood to claim the lives of Stutthof's guards. Johann Pauls, the previous commander, and another female guard, Gerda Steinhoff, were hanged on some massive central triple gallows in front of 20,000 people who had assembled to see the executions. But on a gallows to the side, Ava Parodies and Jenny Wanda Barkman, two young ladies notorious for their aggression, were hauled out on a truck. The pair had been seated on a stool on the truck, and the executioners then approached. One of them put a noose around Ava Parodies' neck, and then the last-minute arrangements were conducted with the noose around her neck. Ava was left dangling from the gallows while she stood on a stool, and then the truck slowly drove off. She strangled to death slowly while the throngs watched, and it took several minutes for her to be declared dead. Just 25 years old, Ava Parodies was executed using the short drop technique alongside 10 other guards from Stutthof and Kapos who perished that day. She was a woman who made the Stutthof inmates terrified, and her acts helped to explain the high death toll there at the location. Along with ladies like Jenny Wanda Barkman, Elizabeth Volkenrath, and Irma Grease, she was among a lot of young women who turned to violence within the concentration camps.